Yep.
Okay. I know this might be hard to imagine, but imagine that you're back in high school and it's your senior year. It's college application season and you've decided all the schools you would even consider going to. You send in your test scores, your grades, any essays that you asked for, and now you're waiting. But there's that one school that you've always dreamed about and it's at the top of your list. You know that school has very high requirements, all A's, maybe some B's, and maybe even a C, and really high test scores. You worked all through high school to maintain this so that one day you can attend that school. So you're waiting to hear back from all the schools, and that one school sends you your letter. You open it up, and you're in. All your hard work paid off. Now, I'm going to tell you guys that this isn't necessarily, the school that they applied to isn't necessarily the University of Kansas, considering that the University of Kansas does not require A's and B's or very high test scores, but rather C's and pretty 20 on grade CT, pretty low scores. So almost everybody in this room had to apply to the University of Kansas, so this all should be relevant to you. And the University of Kansas is an incredible school and should be held to the standards of one. So about a year ago right now, I was going through this process of applying to colleges and had to look at requirements for all the different schools. So I know exactly how the process works, as well as I've done a lot of research and I found some scholarly articles to share with you guys today. So first, I'm going to talk to you guys about what it could be like if we raise the standards to get into the University of Kansas undergrad, what could happen if we don't raise the standards and leave them as they are now, and why leaving them as they are now is not the right choice for our school. So like I said, I'm going to start with what could happen if we raise the standards. So Ferguson, who used to be a speechwriter for George H.W. Bush during his presidency and wrote for Time magazine, talked about in his book about how getting your kids into college, he talked about how kids will try hard to get into the school that they want to be at. And so if kids have a dream to go to a specific university, that they will try hard. So I know there are a lot of people you could probably see walking around our school that have dreamt about going to the University of Kansas since they were in diapers. They've always been bleeding crimson and blue. So these students didn't necessarily have to try their absolute hardest to get in here. They didn't have to try as hard as, say, somebody who was going to one of the top universities in our school, whether that be an Ivy or a public university. So if we increase the standards of our school, we will have people who have been trying hard their entire life. This is not to say that people who received lower scores were not trying. It's just saying that this increases the chance that we will have people who worked hard, who worked harder. Another issue is that stereotypes is a big deal in our society, whether that be individual or as a school. So when we are applying for jobs later in life or applying to get into a graduate school, they look at the prior education that you've received. So if you're comparing it to say, the Ohio State University. So University of Kansas is at the top, Ohio State is on the bottom, and it's kind of hard to see, but the blue and green dots represent who was accepted, and on the left you see their GPA, and on the bottom you see their SAT, ACT score. So at the top you see a lot more green and blue all around, whereas on the Ohio State one, you see it more in just the top right corner. So this is Ohio State. It's not necessarily one of the top schools, but it does have high scores, and it has a good reputation. This is UC Berkeley, which is a top 10 United States public university. And as you can see, there's a lot more red in there, and that is because UC Berkeley has an extremely high reputation. So there's no reason that the University of Kansas can't have a good reputation like these schools, where say later in life you're applying for a job, if you're put up against someone who went to UC Berkeley and you attended the University of Kansas undergrad, you had the exact same grades, maybe the same extracurriculars, they might consider the person who had a higher, who went to a harder school to get into. And there's no reason that the University of Kansas can't have a better stereotype. And this will happen if we increase our standards. Also, if we increase our standards, the dropout rate will decrease immensely. According to the University of Kansas website, only 37.4% of students who attend the University of Kansas graduate after 4 years. And from there, only 27.9% continue their education here, which means that the rest of those, the other about 35%, drop out of our school. And this is just within 4 years. So, like I said, only 37.4% graduate, 27.9% continue their education, which means about 35% drop out. So if we increase our standards, we will be increasing the chance that people will be graduating or at least continuing their education here. Because if we're accepting 92% of applicants, that means we're accepting people who don't necessarily have the work ethic to get it done, who don't necessarily have the mindset to be able to graduate in that amount of time. So like I said, this is just one option. We can also keep the standards where they are right now. And there are some good reasons for doing that. For example, Paulson, who attended the Yale University Law School, said that schools look for more than just grades, which is 100% true. Schools do look for diversity, like religion, races, home life. If you're a first generation college student, if you're a second generation, they do look for all these things, which is very true. Also, Dr. who graduated from Indiana, talked about how scholarships reward people who have those higher grades when they're coming into college. So not necessarily that people who are receiving these higher grades are not being recognized. They are being recognized when they're attending the college of their choice. And also, some people think that if we increase the standards, that we will have a smaller school. Right now, we're at about 28,000 undergrad students, and that if we accept less, there'll be less attending. These are just some thoughts that people have. Now, although these are good points, they are not 100% valid. For example, when Paulson talked about how schools look for more than just grades, yes, schools look for more than just grades, but they also need to look at grades. Because although college is an experience, a chance to find yourself, it's also about your academics. So schools may look for all these different things, but ultimately they need to have people who will maintain the grades to be able to graduate and have a degree from the University of Kansas. And for scholarships, the point that Dr. Who brought up. He talked about how people who are receiving more receive the scholarships. In those schools that I put up on the board, the Ohio State University and UC Berkeley, those schools also give out scholarships. They just give out scholarships to people who receive even more. So if we increase our requirements, that means we can also increase the requirements for scholarship. It's not like we have to cancel one of them out. And I disagree that there will be less people attending our school. I actually think there will be more, because there are certain people who only look for high-achieving schools, and if they are looking at the University of Kansas that way, there's a better chance that they're going to want to go there. So today I talked to you guys about what could happen and why we want to increase the standards, what could happen and why we want to leave them the same, and why that isn't the best option for our school. So, like I said, the University of Kansas is an incredible school and deserves to have the standards to get into one. And it is your turn. Go to the University of Kansas Office of Admissions and talk to them about raising the standards of our school. Because that kid at the beginning of the speech when I talked about how to try hard to get into a school, that can be the